This is the Game Philosopher. Thank you for watching this video. So, one of the things I've been doing a lot lately was being on a trip, but now I'm back, as you can tell by the usual surrounding. And during my trip, there's this confrontation I had with a video or a channel called Scratch Point, and I'll link the video I'm referring to in the description. But the whole entire video was an attack on Boogie2988, who's one of my heroes on YouTube. He and Philip DeFranco have a huge influence on me and how I do things. Unfortunately, this person wanted to talk about Boogie2988 and call him a emotional manipulator. And then he goes and he takes evidence for, or so-called evidence from the Backlash to the H3 podcast. And I think really some of the issue here is that he doesn't really understand the purpose of the Boogie2988 channel. Now, for those of you who do not know, probably such as Scratch Point, Boogie2988 is a channel for comedy and gaming. He also does lots of weight loss updates, and he also talks a lot about mental health because he was a victim of abuse as a child. And you can all look at the videos which he talks about it by going to his channel, which I will also link in the description. And his primary purpose really is to talk about gaming, to have gaming news, to have funny little sketches using his characters such as Jesse, which is this redneck from Texarkana, and Francis, who is pretty much, as he describes, how he used to be before he grew up. And with his history of abuse, he also has a lot of issues that a lot of people have when they put themselves up there on the internet, which is cyber harassment and consistent attacks from people despite knowing his mental illness or health issues. The accusation by Scratch Point was that Boogie2988 hides behind mental health issues to shield from criticisms, and in doing so he is an emotional manipulator, as demonstrated by the recent Twitch streams and Twitter posts, which demonstrates that he uses a controversial opinions, then hides behind his mental health issues to get people on his side, and hides behind centrism because he is fearful of taking a side. Now, what I'm going to talk about right here is that my opinion is that Boogie2988 is a man who has a lot of internet fame, and with that, a lot of chaos erupts. Unfortunately, he's also a man who has had a lot of bad things in his life that happened, and he does not wish other people to suffer because of him. Unlike Scratch Point's opinion, I take into account that and feel that it's best to realize that he could not be an emotional manipulator because he wishes that other people are not harmed by him. Now, of course, with my talking about the accusation by Scratch Point, of course he did not say what I said word for word, and he might say that I was taking his point out of context or whatever, but if you watch this video, that's exactly what he was saying. And he does somewhat acknowledge that there might be a possibility that Boogie2988 might legitimately have issues, but it's not the fact that he has the issues. It's more that Scratch Point doesn't realize the fact that it's not really a possibility. It's literally what's going on. Now, for this, I would have to say that the statement about Boogie2988 made on Scratchpoint's channel is completely false, because the whole entire meaning of the channel is not a debate channel. He's a Boogie2988 is a channel where it's a gamer who's trying to deal with his life issues, and then he's trying to entertain people at the same time. He's trying to have fun, and he's not at all really seeming to be a emotionally manipulative type. He does not take sides in debate, and he's very much entitled to his opinions. And now, if you go to Twitter or you go to Facebook, you'll notice that a lot of people have their opinions they put down, and a lot of times they block people for disagreeing with them because they're just blowing off steam sometimes on issues that might be going on in society. Now, Boogie2988 did that with his his Twitter, in response to some of the things or allegations by the H3 podcast, or by people who were watching it, where the issue was that they thought he wasn't strong enough on the issue of homosexual rights, and pretty much Boogie actually was on their side, but at the same time he was not really as extreme. He did not think that there should be extreme and sometimes violent change. He thinks that it should happen over and over time, so that no one gets hurt or killed through this effort towards change. And I think that it's an admirable position, but I'm not going to talk too much on it. Although I think that what had happened was that this person who responded, she tried to, I think it was a she. She tried to attack him and coerce him into being more extreme towards her side, to try to condemn him for having an opinion of his own. And this type of stuff happens a lot these days, because a lot of times people don't really have the education of eloquence or rhetoric or even logic that they would find it better to attack people than gaining their goodwill and getting them to trust them, and in that way say their opinion and increase the likelihood that the person might consider that opinion and might go towards that opinion. But of course, people are too impatient for that type of respect. And I think really that going back to the idea that Boogie2988 was a victim of abuse as a child, and he deals with a certain amount of cyber harassment, as is the case with that one post that takes one thing out of context in the H3 podcast. I think that really it shows that people really need to grow up and realize that yes, Boogie288 or 2988 might be a little weak. He's not an emotional manipulator, but since he's a little weak, and no offense, Boogie, if you're watching, I'm just trying to allow people to realize your position, or your the area that you're in. That people will try to attack you, or if you're weak, and they kind of get off on it, especially if you are someone who has a lot of following, such as Boogie2988 does. And since he has, now I'm going to go to the next point, that since he has such a following, he has really no reason to emotionally manipulate, because the emotional manipulation would really not do anything to further his channel or put his shit behind. And in fact, it actually might hurt him a little bit, because people would get tired of it and leave him. But since he's very sincere, that's not really the case. Now, the events surrounding the H3 podcast and the later Twitch streams of June 28th, 2018 are issues which can be logically explained because people, as I said, try to force him to take sides even though he's a non-debating channel. And in response to Boogie2988's opinions, people had called a welfare check because, you know, he's very much someone with a history of depression, and this happened while he was going on a date with a woman in his house, and he was not really angry. If you look at the podcast, or I mean the Twitch stream, he was just frustrated and, you know, venting his opinion on these things. And he might have thought that people were being jerks to him, which people were. But, you know, if you were to have a date with a woman and someone suddenly calls the cops on you, and knowing that you had a history with depression, so that the cops would go to your house to check up on you with the paramedics in the fire truck in the middle of the day, what would happen is you would probably be angry too. In fact, you might be livid, and Boogie2988 actually gave a opinion which was not so livid or angry, because he speaks a lot as a voice of reason, even though he a lot of times is influenced by his mental health issues. And people who do stuff like that, like, I'm not really sure the person's intention, because I was able to look at the stuff myself, and Boogie2988 said it was already resolved. But I think people who do stuff like that really don't deserve a lot of respect. And, you know, it's a sad thing that Scratch Point and people like him would assume any type of ill intent by Boogie2988, because in my comment on the video that Scratch Point made, he showed a lack of willingness to admit that other opinions may be correct or may not be correct, and he acted with a lot of brashness instead of being capable of listening to others. This shows that his point in creating such a video was not at all any good, but either that he wanted to attack Boogie2988 for some reason, whether it be jealousy or something else. And it's a very sad day to go when people go to great measures of coercion to get people on their sides. It is unjust to attack Boogie2988 as an emotional manipulator, because he is certainly not. He's a good man who unfortunately is out there to be attacked by many just because he has an opinion. People share their opinions all the time, and for some reason opinions seem to be hated like the plague in this day and age. Granted that opinions are weaker than ideas because ideas have backing knowledge. This is certainly a time which would stop the growth of ideas if opinions are assailed, and Boogie2988 is the type who creates ideas whenever he speaks, but he does not believe in debating. Is there something wrong with this? I hope you all have a wonderful night, and I'll see you on the next video I make, which will be rebooting the whole entire, well, not necessarily rebooting, but going to the next video of modern Platonicism. it will be on friendship. The one that I've advertised a little bit so far, and I think you will all enjoy it because we'll also be talking about a little bit with conversation tactics which Socrates used in Lysis, which is the dialogue on friendship. Now, if you think about what I just talked about in this video, you don't want to coerce people when you make it an opinion, or make an argument. In fact, you might want to, as Socrates would say, that it's better to use gentle persuasion to force. And when you do that, you actually win people over. You're not trying to force people over, because people will resent that, and that causes a very bad thing. And it's not wrong to not take a side. In fact, it's not wrong to take a side either. It's something that just happens, and when you try to look to gathering goodwill from someone who might be of a different opinion, things might actually go better for you, because people prefer a friend to an enemy. In fact, if you attack people, they will just censor your opinion completely if they are rational. But if you, at the same time, if you block people for giving a contrary opinion right off, well, that's another thing, and that's something that would show a little bit of childishness. But at the same time, I hope you guys have a good day, and just try to be good.